Mike Rogers is joining us as well. He's a former chairman of the House Intelligence Committee. He's a CNN national security commentator. What do you want to hear tonight, Mike, from the president?
I think he's got to lay out a better plan than we've heard. If you recall, there he stumbled a while on, well, we don't really have a strategy, and he never quite fully recovered from that. And we hear fits and starts. He talks about we're going to ramp up airstrikes, and then you hear that 80% of the planes that leave come back with their munitions because they don't have targets to engage in because of rules of engagement and bad intelligence on the ground. And so I think he really needs to finally say, I'm going to lay out a strategy on how I'm going to go after ISIS using our Arab League partners and others. Right now, it is just a hodgepodge of press releases about certain things he's going to do or not do. And then they, candidly, they get off, Wolf, on this crazy, and this is all about political distraction, this guns, getting for the no-fly list, you can't go buy a gun. That has nothing to do with what happened in California. We're talking about a radicalized extremist group that has a worldwide infrastructure, and we don't really have a good plan to put pressure on it. And that includes diplomacy, military, intelligence. None of that is weaved together. If he goes up tonight, the President of the United States, and lays out that plan and says this is why we're going to do this, how we're going to do it, and we can maintain American values in the process, I think he could do a lot of good in the fight. If he says this is one of those, to be clear speeches, you don't exactly understand what I've been doing, I think it's going to be a complete failure.
What do you think, Mike Rogers? Does the president need new congressional authorization to launch this war against ISIS in Raqqa, their so-called caliphate capital in Syria?
Well, you and I have talked about this before, Wolf, when I was chairman of the House Intelligence Committee. I believed he needed it several years ago. I think Congress needs to step in a real and meaningful way and give the president authorization for military force. We already have forces engaged in that region. This is through our elected representatives telling America that we have their back. I think that's critical. But here's the other part of this. We need to be very careful not to minimize what happened in California. This is a pattern. ISIS is now in almost 30 different states. It's operating on serious levels, both logistically, it's mirroring with former other organizations, Al-Shabaab being one of them. Al-Qaeda affiliates, almost half of them have pledged support to the mission of ISIS. We have a big and growing problem, and I think the longer the president decides he doesn't want to deal with this head on, the more problem we're having. And as David said, Americans understand this. They saw when the Russian plane went down. They saw the bombing in Lebanon. They saw the attack in Paris. They saw the attack in California. They're hearing about the reports of the beheading plots disrupted right here in the United States, in Australia, in Canada. You can't not understand the weight of what is happening in reality and have a more political nothing to see here move along. I think this is a very important speech for the president and really for America. If we want to finally get Americans together, then we need to do it. This speech needs to help push Americans together on defeating ISIS. If there's any division in this, I'm going to be highly disappointed in the president.
General Mike Rogers, I thought it was significant the president used this occasion, this Oval Office address, to once again chide the NATO ally Turkey to seal that border between Turkey and Syria. The president the other day said there was about 100 kilometers, 60 miles, that people were just going back and forth, presumably ISIS terrorists as well. And in this particular case, he said, yes, the U.S. is increasing intelligence with the allies, with France, with the U.K., and with Turkey. But he also said, Turkey, you better seal that border.
Yeah, candidly, this whole sharing the intelligence thing makes for a great talking point. It has no reality and substance. There has always been a very robust sharing relationship with each country you mentioned. Now we have special relationships with the UK and Canada, Australia and New Zealand that is beyond anything that any other country would get. But anything of a threat nature was always shared with these countries. So I think my disappointment here, yeah, he went after the border with Turkey. Part of this issue is he has got to unwind himself, and bear with me here for a minute, Wolf. When he made this deal with Iran and then started talking nice about Russian activities in Syria, I watched our Arab League partners, they had to unscrew him from the ceiling. he has some political unwinding to do if you're ever going to get to that diplomatic place of a Sunni awakening that helps us push ISIS out of western Iraq and eastern Syria. And what we found now is there's no big willingness to do that because they're not clear on what American strategy is. Is it to allow the Russians to continue to do what they do? I saw Susan Rice earlier on CNN say, well, we've got to get rid of Assad. There's no to do that. There's no negotiation to do that. There's no bringing in our Sunni relationships in eastern Syria to do it. So I was very disappointed in this speech in what I heard other panelists say. This was kind of more of the same. And the very fact that they announced a financial meeting on December 17th tells you the strategy has supposed to have been hitting it on all fronts already. So you're hitting logistic targets today, which tells me that's a reaction to the events, not a strategy. Now you're announcing the financial services on December 17th. That's a reaction to the terrorist attack in California, not a strategy. And I just don't see any difference. So if you want to have something that doesn't look like 100,000 troops on the ground, and I think that's a terrible idea, you have to be able to function on all cylinders at all fronts. That means you have to have some diplomatic fixing of relationships with our Arab League partners. You have to have U.S. intelligence operations on the ground, much more robust than we have. And you can't just send a Special Forces task force. It has to be integrated with a larger strategy. And that's what I didn't hear tonight. And that's, again, why I was really disappointed in the president's speech.